Recently, the University of Maryland, D.J. Durkin, the university president, announced um, Wallace D. Lowe. And it's an interesting case because I don't know if everybody knows that I didn't know that Maryland recently joined the big uh, the Big Ten, and so did Rutgers joined the Big Ten football um, league, which is a powerhouse for football teams. Maryland joined in 2014. Anyway, the way this case came about was that this guy, McNair, his name was McNair, and he was a player on the football team. I think he played tackle. Um, and they were having some kind of practice of this year, and I assume it was hot. McNair's a pretty big guy and has huge arms. I'm looking at him. And all of a sudden, well, they had the guy out there teaching him, telling him what to do. He was a strength coach. So I don't think that they were actually playing a football game. So he had them working out, doing exercises, especially the linemen. And most of these linemen in college now run close to 300 pounds, so they're big. And taking them outside in June, it's hot. It's real hot. And what happened, all of a sudden he got a temperature. His temperature went to 106 degrees. Then, after 2 weeks, well, they said a 106 degree fever, sustained heat stroke, and then died 2 weeks later. He was 19 years old. He was an offensive lineman, and I guess he was trying to make the Maryland football team. But Maryland, though, they were moving up to the big boys when they joined this Big Ten league. And Rutgers did it too, another team joined the Big Ten. So the head coach, D.J. Durkin of Maryland, was put on leave in August. Then lately, he was called back, like he was going to get his job back. And that lasted a couple days, and then they told him, no, you're fired. They fired him, and his salary this year was $2.5 million. So this McNair death really caused a lot of people to start yelling, and I don't know, supposedly Mr. Durkin, who was the head coach, I don't think he was out there on the field, but this strength coach was giving them work to do, and the boy was 19 years old, offensive lineman. I don't know his weight, but most of them are around 250, 260, maybe 270 for an offensive lineman. And that happened May 29th. And that was Mr. Court supervised as the strength coach. And then his temperature went to 106 degrees. I don't think it ever come down, and he died 2 weeks later. Naturally, his father was yelling from day one that he wanted the head coach fired from the team.
That's crazy.
But the way this happened, and he was relieved from his job for a while. Then they called him back like everything was fine. And then after a couple of days, they said, no, you're fired, get out. So, I mean, football's a strange game. Now, why they had a man, and I'm looking at his arms, are huge, offensive lineman out there at the end of May in a huge, probably a huge amount of heat doing drill. I have no idea, because this guy's a strength coach and he's supposed to be making them stronger. But they said he sustained a heat stroke and then died 2 weeks later. The coach that was showing him what to do, the strength coach, he quit. He resigned in August. It's funny that there are no penalties against anybody for this.
Yeah. Wow.
And some other schools, Rutgers got into the Big Ten also this year, and they had some problem with saying the head coach was bribing the instructor to try to raise the star players' grades. And also Baylor, they said the head coach had handled numerous sexual assault allegations and convictions against football players. So they've had some trouble in the Big Ten right now, since all three of these teams are in the Big Ten, except Baylor isn't. Baylor's not in the Big Ten, but Rutgers and Maryland are. So I don't know. You know, this football is a strange game, but you just wonder how many players you should put in and how many you could take out. Now, I know I played in a game where this was regular football. We were playing, and a huge end for the other side hit me right in the head. I mean, hit me hard. And I went down. I was going back to the huddle. I didn't know it. I thought I was walking back to the huddle, but I was crawling back to the huddle on my knees. So I got back to the huddle somehow. We had a couple more plays, and then we punted to them, so we went off the field. And I'll never forget this in my life, but I was standing on the sidelines right next to the head coach, and we punted to them, and then we got the ball back, and he said, Pavlak, get back in there. You know, I was wondering who's watching my head, you know. So I put on my helmet, went back into play, but that shows those are the things that happen in football. People get hurt, they get knocked out, they have bad injuries, and the coach said, Pavlak, get back in there. So I went back in, but I didn't like it, but I did what he said. You know, I was on a scholarship, and I had to do what the coach said. But these are some of the things that happen in college football, and there's nothing left to see on this McNair, because McNair's dead, 19. The coach was fired, and this guy was never a head coach before either. This was his first.
So you're saying the coach was at fault for his death?
Dirk was never a head coach, especially a team this size and this competition. A lot of people were wondering, could he do the job? He had never been a head coach before. Well, I appreciate you watching us today, and we will see you tomorrow.